Hello, good evening, everyone. Am I audible? It'll be really helpful if someone can please confirm in the chat if I'm audible or not. Oh, great. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Uh, okay, a bit louder, please. Sure, sure. I'll be a little, a little louder. Okay, so good evening, everyone. I hope everyone is doing fine amidst the lockdown. People are keeping in and are still healthy. So today's topic for DCP series that we are doing during the lockdown is breaking the mold in wildlife photography. So here, in this expression, the mold doesn't mean fungus on a damp wall. It is basically a set mindset, which we are talking about when we talk about breaking the mold in wildlife photography. So Dalai Lama says that know the rules well so you can break them efficiently, and which is absolutely true. To actually break the rules or to to do something out of the box, you need to first know what is within the box. You need to know the rules first to properly break it. Properly break it in the sense in terms of photography, I would say that artistically break it. So let's get on with the session. It's a 45-minute session, and we'll be taking questions at the end of it. So if you have any questions, please note it down and park it for the end of the session when we have the question answer session. So what goes into making an offbeat wildlife image? I've been asked this question many a times, that what goes into making an offbeat wildlife image. It is actually a pretty cumbersome process. It starts with researching about the animal that you're trying to photograph, or the habitat that you're going to go into, trying to find the animal, and starting to study the available imagery that is there. With the advent of internet, it has become quite simple, I would say, compared to past, that we can now get to see the images or the work of what others are doing regarding a particular subject. For example, if you're going to shoot the demersal cranes this year, suppose you plan that next season you're trying to go and shoot the migratory demersal cranes, which comes to Rajasthan every year. So you can just go and Google demersal cranes and just write Rajasthan, and you'll be able to see a plethora of images which have been shot. And in the recent past, you can also, internet is a very good medium to do your research when it comes to knowing that what others have done so far on particular image. And the tip here would be to take a mental note of what has been done and deliberately avoid doing that when you're going out and shoot. Okay, there's no harm in no harm in repeating a particular composition, a particular setting. It's absolutely all right. It's like doing a cover of the song, but cover of a song by some other musician. But original is always original. So if you're trying to break the mold, you should always, and you're in the session, which means that you're trying to. So you should always try to do something original of your own. Okay. Now, research also takes care of, during this phase. We also take care of the studying the animal behavior, particular animal that we're going to photograph, what season it comes out, what kind of behavior that it's going to display. We're going to be taking examples of each of the. We'll dwell deep into it, how you approach this. The next phase is planning. So in this phase, you typically pre-visualize, you arrange for permissions, you check the weather, you see what locations is available, wherever you can actually go ahead and photograph the subject, and what about the safety, which is the most important part. You have to be safe. One assignment shouldn't be your last assignment. So a pre-visualization, I say pre-visualization, which is the most important part of the planning phase. Reason being that this is when you create your images in your mind. You create your images first in your mind, first on a, maybe, you might not be a great painter or something. Just draw some rough sketches. You can do some rough sketching, and just a line diagram of where you want your subject to be, what kind of sky you want, you know that depends on the weather, location, what are going to be your settings. See, all these things I'm asking you to take care of this during the planning phase itself. The reason being, when an opportunity comes in front of you in the field and you have not pre-visualized it or not thought of it before, uh, most of the times there are cases when you're able to make an image out of an opportunity which shows up in front of you. But maximum cases would be like when you're going to miss the shot, because it's going to be right in front of you, but you'll not be able to perceive that, okay, this is what I this is going to make something interesting. Okay, so it is always great to plan your shots beforehand. It could be anything. It might take, and it might take any amount of time. It could be days, months, years before you have particularly stumbled upon a scene which is pre-visualized by you. But this is an advantage, that places or geographies don't change very soon. So if you keep visiting the same place again and again and again, you can always keep in mind some shots which you want to make when the right opportunity arises. Permissions is something which you have to deal with in India. Typically, if you're doing a safari, and it's actually the easiest. You can just pay for your safari permission, your park permit, and your camera fee and stuff, and you can just get in and start photographing animals. But if you're doing something on maybe on foot, maybe you have to enter a national park on foot. So then there is a lot of red tape that you have to go through, and you have to get the permissions beforehand, because it is not allowed in a reserve forest to for anybody to enter without a permission, and that is for the safety of the animals as well as you. The weather and the location. So an animal, typically in India, if I see, then an animal appears at great many locations. Okay, so you need to decide upon which location is favorable for your kind of shot. It's not that most of the times when I have gone to areas where I haven't studied about the area much, when I go there, I see the animal, but I realize that many a times the setting in which I find the animal is no good for a shot. Especially the shots that I pre-visualize, that okay, this is the kind of shot I wanted to make. But if you do not know about the location, it can be a spoiled sport. As well as the weather. The weather is a greatest unpredictable factor. You can just go somewhere and it might just rain all of a sudden. And nowadays, for the last 2 years, the weather patterns have been really erratic. But you can still predict to some extent. You have apps nowadays which is going to give you some weather prediction. You can watch the news to get some weather prediction of a particular area. And these areas, and this is pretty much accurate. It's not been keeping really, throughout the year. It might go wrong a couple of times or something, but most of the times it is correct. And you could always depend on these weather apps. And the last, but not the least, and actually the most important during the planning phase, is the plan to be safe. Whenever I do a lot of wide angle work of big mammals. I've shot rhinos in wide, I've shot elephants in wide, some cats and stuff. But you always have to you know take care of your own safety. Always remember that there's always going to be another opportunity which you can utilize and make the shots that you want to make. But you should your safety is in your hand, and you should never compromise with it. The next portion that we would be going through is the gear that is suitable for typically trying to do something different from what has been the set standard in wildlife photography for quite some time now. So we'll be going deeper into this once we go through the slides going ahead. The next part is the most the easiest part of the process. It is basically taking the shot. Though it is I say that it is the easiest part of the process, but definitely it does involves a lot of presence of mind. When you are in the field, I'll show you examples from some of my very recent images I'm going to show you during this presentation, which have never been published or revealed anywhere. So you'll see. So through those images, I hope I'll be able to convey the point that presence of mind, observing your surroundings. uh, you have planned on something. If that doesn't turn up, having a backup plan and then executing it, it does take a little bit of effort, but definitely execution is probably the easiest of the whole process. So let's get on with the first part of the process. It's research. So I'll be going through images, and I'm going to be telling you about the kind of research that I did before I could go ahead and make this image possible in field. So the first image would be democile cranes, which we shot at the outskirts of Jodhpur this year, uh, and I mean the past winter. So with this particular shot, the visual that I had in mind during my research phase, I did search for a lot many images. And there are some fantastic photographers from rest of India who have shot these cranes, and typically I found that low angles were pretty prevalent, and those all the images, primarily almost all the images, were made in a place called Khichen, which is again near Jodhpur. But what I noticed in those images is Khichen is an enclosed space. You can still see man-made elements. If you're not pointing the camera straight up, you're able to see some man-made elements at a distance. And I didn't want to have that in the shot. I wanted the cranes to look as if they're free. They're completely, out in the wild. There's no man-made element around them. And also, the other And also, the other thought that I had in my mind is basically to have an angle different from what has already been done. This is what I was talking about. When you're doing your research, doing your research, you need to be actually, be able to figure out that what kind of images you want and what you don't want from your image, or what you want from your image, how you're going to stand out from the crowd. It's very important in today's time. Everybody nowadays has a camera, and every second person is a wildlife photographer. So how you're supposed to stand out amongst the crowd if you're not are not producing work which is different? It might be a little disturbing to hear, but most of the work that we come across nowadays is according to the science. Everybody is using a super telephoto lens and doing a clean background and nice portrait of an animal. Portraits are good, absolutely fantastic, but why not try to do something different when portraits have been around for so long? So during while making this, while planning this image, we had this in mind that we do not want the low angle. If we are going to do the low angle, we are going to play around with the light a little bit, because we did not want to have normal front lit shots of the cranes, because that had already been done, and making an image from what had different from what has already been done was a little, it's quite difficult with the cranes. They are a lot of photographers shoot them every year, and kitchen, you don't find place over there to stay. During the winters it's so crowded. So the first thing was we avoided kitchen altogether. These cranes, they come out, they are basically winter migrants. They come to India during the winter months, and you have the Bishnoiya tribe of Rajasthan. These people, they actually feed the cranes. And they have been doing it for donkeys years. Typically for hundreds of years they have been actually feeding these cranes, and now these cranes are adapted to this particular behavior. They're absolutely wild. But the kitchen is also similar. Kitchen is a similar setting, but kitchen has got a lot of human elements around. It has enclosures. But we found out a village where there were no enclosures, and there was, close to 3 to 4,000 cranes which were coming over there. Another thing that we had in our mind while making this shot is to avoid the low angle, as I said. So what we did is we fixed our cameras up on a khejri tree. So the trees that you see in the background, so the trees that you see in the background are actually khejri trees. So to get the perspective where it looks like as if I am a fellow crane, or I'm just, standing with the cranes, we set up our cameras a little high up the khejri tree, and we tied down the camera over there, and then we fired remotely from a distance where we are not disturbing the crane. This is another very important part which I want to highlight over here is you must not disturb your subjects when you're shooting them. Even if you have rigged your camera with a trigger and you're shooting from a distance, let the subject get used to the smell, the presence of the camera in that area. Okay. Do not start firing the shots the moment you see a subject. The subject is going to get spooked, and you'll never get your shot. So it is always a good practice to sit down and wait and let the subject be habituated to the change in the habitat that it is noticing, and then maybe it will give you the opportunity to make shots which you like. Moving on to the next image. So this is quite a widely published image. This image was made in Jaisalmer 2 years back. This is a pretty known phenomena where foxes, the desert foxes specifically, they feast on this Indian jujube fruit or bear during the winters. It's probably because of the high sugar content of these fruits. But I noticed, going through the work of other people, I noticed that this behavior had been photographed. There are a lot many telephoto shots of the same behavior. So I decided that, okay, how do I want to become different from the set standard of the fox images where the fox is eating bear, or it is with the bear, like that. So I opted for a wide angle perspective. I set my camera at the base of a tree. Okay. Now again, the research part comes into picture here. That it was not difficult to find the foxes. In Jaisalmer, if you go, you'll find quite literally hundreds of individuals. If you start roaming around for like 3-4 days, you'll get to see hundreds of different individuals, desert foxes, during winters. It's very easy to see them. It's not a difficult task at all. But what is difficult is to understand a spot where you can set your cameras up and where the fox visits frequently. The fox visits the place every day. That is when this is what is difficult about this shot. It's not about just setting up the camera and the settings. Your technical settings, believe me, once you are comfortable with it, it's probably the easiest thing that there is. It's basically the least of a challenge when you are trying to photograph and trying to make different shots. But rather than the practical problems, these practical problems pose much bigger challenges than your technical problems. So what we did is we tried to find a tree which was frequented by the foxes. So how do you find a tree? It's there's so many trees out there. We want to find a bay tree. Every 10 meters there is a nice bay tree in Jaisalmer, or probably the frequency is even higher. So it's quite difficult to find one tree which is continuously visited by foxes. Okay, and they repeat the behavior. So there are small bay trees where foxes come and they eat the bear and they go away. They'll be able to finish the fruits in just one go. 2-3 foxes will come and they'll finish the bear and they just go away. We needed to find a tree which had copious amounts of fruit, and we during the recce we stumbled upon a boy. I stumbled upon a boy who was very kind enough to actually tell us that there is a bay tree inside. Of course, this was inside the restricted area, so we had to take special permissions. So there's a bay tree inside the restricted area where 6 people from 6 villages go out there and eat from this particular tree. So we initially did not believe him, that how can people from 6 villages eat bear from one single tree. But when we went there, believe me, it's the biggest bay tree of my life. I've never seen anything like as big as that. It was like a big banyan, the tree, and it had copious amounts of fruit. There was fruit all around. Okay. And during the wait for the first day itself, we noticed that there were 8 foxes visiting that area. Five were desert foxes, and 3 were Indian foxes. So Indian fox was kind of a bonus, even though we did not. I mean, I did not during that particular time. I was not able to make a really convincing shot of the Indian fox because they were a little more fidgety than the desert foxes. But again, the desert fox did give us an image which is quite memorable, and this image has gone places. Moving on to the next image. So this is a silhouette of 2 lionesses playing against the backdrop of a lake. So now this particular behavior, or how you become, how your research tells you that when you have to be ready for a shot. Otherwise, such action sequences, they are absolutely fleeting in the wild. I mean, it happens and it just vanishes before you pick up the camera. If you're shooting with, say, a 500 prime or a 600 prime, or a like the f4 primes, or like a 400 2.8, these are heavy lenses. You can't keep pointing the lens continuously towards the scene. You eventually keep the lens down and something happens. You're going to miss it. How you're going to predict that something is going to happen? So you ask around. Talking to the forest department staff in Gorongoro crater, these one of the staff made a passing comment that we were just complaining about the rains, that it is raining, and the staff just passed a comment that you guys are in luck. When it rains, after the rains, the lionesses play. So when he said this, that the lionesses play, we did not take him very seriously in the beginning. We thought that he's just trying to, basically trying to make us happy by saying that, because of the rain, the mood was everybody's mood was a little down. So, but then I confirmed with 2 3 people, and even with my driver, and he said that yeah, he has seen the lions and the lionesses play just after the rains. It might be the cold weather, the sudden cooling of the weather, what brings about that playfulness. But we were ready. We had been given that heads up, and when this happened, I was able to, the river was shining really bright, and I could just underexpose the shot a great deal and shoot this silhouette at a pretty high shutter speed, where I was able to freeze the lionesses the way I wanted to. I wanted them to be like a really minimalistic kind of an exposure, and this was it. The next image is of some elephants at the Amboseli National Park, Kenya. So Amboseli National Park is, if you don't know about the place, it's one of the best places in the world to shoot the African savanna elephant. I mean, nowhere I have seen like such huge herds of elephants. Morning you go there, like 400 elephants crossing and everything. People there are, typically they shoot the crossing shots where a lot of dust is flying around the elephant and everything, but there are very simple vistas which has not been shot differently in Amboseli. For example, Amboseli is visited quite literally by tens of thousands of people every year. So, to study the place and what kind of shots have been made out of the place is quite a task in itself. You need to be, uh, really putting some effort to study all the work which has been done in Amboseli. So, looking at going through most of the work that was there out on the internet, or to my friends and everything, I noticed that, uh, and this was not my first time in Amboseli. So this shot was taken probably during my third visit to the park, and I already knew, I mean, how the park looks, where the elements are going to be afternoon, and it was dry season. It was the month of February, less clouds in the sky. But during this time, particularly because it's dry season and water is not available everywhere, the vegetation is scarce. So these elephants, they stick to the swamps which are there in Amboseli. Okay, and with this place is actually quite close to where we were staying during that trip, and we just drove to this place, and there were a lot of elephants there. And I employed a fisheye lens to actually, basically curve the whole frame and give a nice panoramic look. Uh, a technical tip here is, when you are trying to make, panoramic images like this, you can opt. It is a very common to opt for 6:9, but you can also opt for some custom ratios, like 2:1 or something, where the twice the length of an image. So 2:1, you for again makes the image look nicely panoramic. Okay, so so I just climbed up on top of the vehicle and shot the elephants from the top. These elephants were pretty close. If you have shot with fisheye lenses before, you will know that fisheye lenses have got a really wide field of view, and this was, I think, at 10 mm. So the elephants were pretty close. They were probably just a couple of feet or even less than that from us and the vehicle, and we were able to make pull out this perspective, which is again unique because in this case, because of the lens. Okay, so you need to be knowing what gear to use when. I mean, we'll be getting into that part a little later. The next image is of a the next image is of a toad-headed agama from Jaisalmer. So this is one of the most favorite sites in the desert. It is probably the common that you find everywhere. You go to on any dune during the hot months. You are even during winters you sometimes find them. But on top of dunes, if you go, you get to see them over there. And these guys are amazing. I mean, they have beautiful colors on the body, but the most interesting part is not the color or the agility or their body structure or the looks. They're absolutely beautiful. The most interesting part is actually they can bury themselves in the sand. They do that to fend themselves and also ambush their prey. So when they are doing this, I wanted to photograph this, where while a lizard is doing this. Okay, while this agama does this thing. So I did make a lot of shots where it is actually getting into the sand and stuff. But then this image stood out from the rest of the images that I had shot on that particular day, because of the particular behavior. You can see the color and the texture of the body, everything matches with the sand. So knowing more about the lizard, knowing more about the nature of the lizard, and it is actually a pretty easy shot to make once you know what to look for. Once you know, I mean, how the lizard is going to behave in when once it sees you. Okay. Uh, Moving on to the next image. Uh, Again, this image took a lot of research and a lot of effort. It took us, it took me close to 3 years to materialize this one particular image where I can find a hedgehog. I can shoot the hedgehog with a nicely lit night sky where you can see the Milky Way. So I chose the summer months for this particular shot, because that is when you see the Milky Way, like really late in the night when the hedgehogs come out and you see it vertically. So I have other shots where the Milky Way is actually, horizontal with the hedgehog, and the hedgehog is moving and the hedgehog is running. But this shot remains my favorite, where I have this plant, I have the dunes, I have the hedgehog, and I have the Milky Way behind the hedgehog in a nice way. No, this is not a multiple exposure. This is actually a single exposure made with a single flash and a 25-second exposure. This is so I'll be telling a little about the technicalities of this particular image, as somebody has asked this question. So uh, this was okay. Let me just break down the technicalities of this image. So this is a long exposure, 25-second exposure. The flash had a front curtain sync. Basically, it was not a rear or front curtain sync. It was just fired manually, just like that. Okay, so you start the exposure, you fire the flash, you're able to freeze the subject like that. It was fired at the lowest power by moving away from the subject. The subject stayed put at the spot because it was eating a scorpion. And I had never, uh, hedgehogs will typically, when you approach them, and even when they see you, they'll start to just scoot away. But during this, while we were making this particular image, the hedgehog was actually eating a scorpion, and I just happened to it just uh, gave us time to do the shot. The next phase of the image making process is planning the shots. As I already said, told you with the last hedgehog shot that I had to choose the summer months, and I had to choose a particular time of the night when I can find the Milky Way the way it is. Okay, and all the things coming together. It was all the research, and then of course the planning. Okay, so we would be going through more images in this section, and I would be breaking down the planning that we did for each of the images that are there. So the first image is a silhouette of a male lion from Serengeti National Park, Tanzania. So this particular image breaks a few rules. I mean, when I posted this image for the first time, a friend of mine, he contacted me telling me that the background should have been, nice and orange like you see in the evening. So was your white balance 10,000? Was your white balance more or less, or what? Why is it so blue? It is blue because the image is taken. This is blue because the image was taken after dark. And the white balance at that time, if my memory serves me right, was close to 9,000 Kelvin, and still it is absolutely blue. Most of the times we typically get bogged down by the EXIF of an image, that we think that okay, there is something right, something wrong about an image like that, but it's not always the EXIF. There are different approaches to what people are doing. An image can be made in hundreds of different ways using many different EXIF combinations, but it doesn't really matter. I mean, it is basically the thought process behind the image that matters. So in this image particularly, typically the lion, it was after dark, and it was already blue, and the lion had to be, the lion naturally came out like this. And we will take more questions at the end. Please park your questions till the end, and keep a note of that. We have allocated some specific time for that. I mean, it'll be great if you can park it till the end. It just distracts us. Thank you so much. So again, planning. So we knew that there is a pride living on this particular kobje. Kobjes are basically rocky outcrops in the savannas of Serengeti, and they call it kobjes. These are rocky outcrops, and typically you will see big cats dwelling in these rocky outcrops. The reason being, there are very less shady places. You don't have shade, you don't have tree cover, very less tree cover in Serengeti. In Masai Mara, if you compare Masai Mara and Serengeti, there is a very small portion of Serengeti where you find vegetation like Masai Mara, where the animals can go ahead and look for shade and stay under a tree or something like that. In Serengeti, typically shade is very less. So the animals have resorted to staying on top of these kobjes, and because the grass is high, these kobjes also act as very nice vantage points for these predators, where they climb up on top and they keep an eye on the herd movements across the plains, because Serengeti is vast, it's really big. Okay, so we knew that these lions stay at this particular rock, and I wanted to make an image where I had recently watched this movie Lion King. Lion King was released. I just watched that movie before the trip, so that movie was kind of an inspiration for this particular image. But I did not want to do a normally front lit image. This is one more point that I want to highlight over here. If you really want to break the mold, if you really want to make different images, you must do away with the mentality that the sun should always be behind me when I'm shooting the animal. It should be anywhere else but behind you, if you want to create any drama in your image. Typically, images, I'm going to show you some examples from my own work where you'll see that the images are good, the moment is good, everything, but the lighting is actually, it's not that dramatic. Like, you have backlight, you have side light. Try to keep the sun either behind the subject or by the side of the subject, somewhere in between. Somewhere in between is also good, but not behind you all the time. I understand that it's many a times it is not in your control to keep the sun. The lighting is not under your control. Sometimes, of course, it happens in the wild. No matter how much you plan, some things sometimes go wrong. But try to take an effort to do that. Try to plan your visits. Try to plan the time of the day you are visiting. Try to plan the routes that you're going to visit. with this in mind, that particularly, okay, I'm going to visit this particular route during this time of the day. So I had this kind of a silhouette in my mind. And another thing that I was talking about, which I was interrupted, is an orange background of silhouette. It is not necessary. Nowhere it is written that a silhouette need to have an orange background. A silhouette is basically a dark shape. You need to convey an idea through a shape. That is a silhouette. You're not going to get any details or anything. It could be any color. It could be black and white. It doesn't really matter which color it is. If you're able to convey the idea through the shapes, it's a successful silhouette. And I feel it's pretty nicely conveyed through this chair. The lion is sitting like a lion, the king of the jungle, on top of a rock, nicely posed. And this image, because we had planned and planned and planned continuously to, see one lion on top of this. Maybe the fate had it that on our last safari, when we were coming out of Serengeti National Park, when we were going back to our resort, finishing our safari, the last thing that we saw in the darkness was kind of a rock on top of a rock. And I noticed that I thought that, okay, I haven't seen this rock. I've been here for 4-5 days and I've never seen this rock on top. So where did this rock come from? We stopped the vehicle and it turned out to be a lion sitting perfectly the way we wanted it to be. It then stood up, yawned, shook his head, and went down. We were fortunately able to click all these images. The next image is of a desert fox amongst the dunes. This is again a very a rare thing to actually see if you go to Desert National Park, and you no matter how hard you try, you will typically never see the desert foxes out in the open. I have seen eagles. I've seen and photographed eagles feeding on desert foxes. I'm not sure if they, if like the ones in Ireland and places abroad, the eagles here too kill desert foxes or hunt them down. But I have always, noticed that these desert foxes typically avoid the open dunes or open areas. Uh, during the day, especially during the day, maybe from the fear of the predators, because here in Jaisalmer there are no other terrestrial predators which are bigger than the desert fox. Ancient, and I mean, in the previous times, maybe like 50-60 years back, there was a healthy population of wolves, but these particular areas, the wolves have all been killed off. Okay, so a desert fox, or in the India fox, basically, typically the foxes, they reside at the top of the food chain, as far as a terrestrial animal is concerned. Of course, an eagle goes down. I mean, eagle can definitely hunt a fox like this. So maybe because of that, they try to avoid these dunes. So we tried to find an area where we could find as many as foxes as we can, and then we studied the footprints, and we noticed that, okay, these are the areas that the foxes come to. And then by planning our time of the day, say, you can, looking at the footprint, you can, most of the times you can actually tell the time of the day when it might have passed. Okay, if the sides are broken, or there is dirt on top of the pug mark, you can always make out from how windy it is, how faint the mark is, and how fresh it is. You can actually make out how fresh it is. So you can kind of basically gauge the time at which the fox might have passed through this area. And then you sit down and you observe from a distance that, okay, where you want to see the foxes, where do you find the maximum amount of footprints, where are they moving. And with all this information, you plan your visits during particular season. This would always be winters. Summers, foxes wouldn't come out in the open like this, because it is excruciatingly hot. It is only during the winter months you'll be able to see a fox amidst the dunes, but that too is very rare, because they don't come out in the open like this during the day. So we just kept trying. After like 4-5 days, we got two opportunities when we saw a fox amidst the dunes, and it was trying to hunt the first one. Just ran so fast that and the light was low, so all the images came out shaky. The second one did give us an opportunity, so I framed it in a way that I could show only the dunes, and show the fox amidst them. The next image is probably of the most handsome rhinoceros that is there in Kaziranga National Park. So this guy, now the planning part, you might having this, you might be having this query that, okay, why this shot in the planning section? This shot in the planning section because you have to plan really well to even see this guy. You won't be able to see him during broad daylight. He doesn't come out. Kaziranga has got a great deal of rhinos, and if you have studied a little bit of animal behavior, especially about rhinos, you'll understand that rhinos typically prefer nighttime. That is when they come out, they play, they graze, they go about their daily activities. This is the time when they come out. So it's very late in the evening when you get to see them. Again, it's not a shot where it is not photoshopped. The darkness in the image is not photoshopped. It is basically the last dying light. Another thing I would like to point out here is you don't need to be scared of high ISOs of your image. Any image is better than no image. Okay, so you got to shoot. So this is basically after sunset that this image was shot, and this is the dying sunlight which is falling on top of the rhino. So I bumped up my ISO to ISO 6400. It was almost pitch dark. It was just a hint of light on the rhino's body. I bumped up my ISO, used a really low shutter speed, wide open at f4 with a 500 mm lens, and I made this image, which has a nice gradient kind of a feel to it. And the noise here actually helps with the texture. The next image is of two snow leopard cubs, which was shot during the maiden DCP expedition, snow leopard expedition that we concluded this year in the month of February. And some of you who have joined this session were also there. So they have been a part of the whole process, and they know how the shot was taken typically. So what I used to do is, when everybody left, I would always wait for typically the last 5 minutes, the last 5-10 minutes. That would be my favorite time when I would stay back. It takes a little bit of effort to stay back, uh, you know to stay back after sundown, especially after the sun goes behind the mountains, because the temperature suddenly drops by 10-15 degrees. But this kind of a light on snow leopard cubs is actually pretty rare to find in most of the shots that you see from people. So I waited. After everybody left, we were able to I underexposed the shot by close to, I think, if my memory serves me correct, it was 2.5 or 3 stops, and I just underexposed it and shot. It came out really well. The next shot, it is basically, yeah, I mean, this shot, it is the plan and everything, but again, I mean, you need to be bold if you want to really break the mold. Most of the photographers that I meet, they say that, okay, wide angle lenses, you're going to get a lot of flare. I won't shoot right at the light, right at into the light source. What's the big deal? You're going to spoil a few shots. What if something useful turns out and the flare looks really nice? Try to make constructive use of all these defects that you find in lenses. So what I did is, I put the camera on top of where the path on the elephant path. So elephants use these fixed path to move across the Amboseli grasslands, and I put the camera on the path, and the elephant came right towards the camera, and the shutter sound spooked it a little. It opened the ears, and that's how I got the pose. The sun shining right into the camera, a nice starburst effect with some sun rays. Because of the flare, you can see there is some nice shine on top of the right tusk. The halo-like effect around the body is actually a little bit of dust which just flew when the elephant suddenly coming to a screeching halt. The next image is of a sambar deer which has grown new antlers. If you notice, the new antlers, they come right after they start to grow them after monsoon months, and the velvety layer after monsoon months, at the beginning of the winter. So the velvety layer, it doesn't stay for long, so you have to time your trip, you have to plan your trip accordingly, so that you get the nice and velvety layer on top of the horn, which catches light in a really nice way. And this particular sambar is the only sambar till date where I have been able to photograph a horn which is completely lit without any break in the at the rim. So it was like perfectly rim lit. If I again remember correctly, this was underexposed by more than 3 stops, mid-afternoon light, cutting across, just hitting the horns the right way. You can see a little bit of ear, the rim of the ear is also lit up, and I didn't have to do much in the post, you know, just crush the shadows a little bit, and the image that you see is almost as is. The next image is of a flamingo, a high key image of a flamingo. So why I have included this image is because I wanted to, make one point clear. Recently during one of my live sessions, one of the people attending it asked me that high keys, most of the people turn high keys into black and whites. Yes, they do, but it's 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 not written anywhere that your high key can't be colored. Okay, I like the reds and the pinks and the nice yellow eye of the flamingo, and the lighting condition was perfect, so I pulled off this shot. This was overexposed by 4 stops, I believe, and what it did is it just blew away everything else, all the other details in the waves in the water and everything, just exposed the shadows in the right manner to get the proper colors and details. The next part, which many of you would be really interested to know, is the gear. So the gear that you use, okay, and there is a lot of choice when you're going to go out in the wild. Typically, telephoto lenses are associated with wildlife photography, and we can just quickly go through the pros and cons that wide-angle lenses and telephoto lenses have. Wide-angle lenses have got a very wide angle of view. They have got a nice deep depth of field. They're handholdable at slow shutter speeds because of their lower focal length. You can use a wide array of filters, and the filters can be of any brand. You don't need special filters. And the telephoto lenses, the pros are, the narrow angle of view, the shallow depth of field. Narrow angle of view basically gives you the zoom that people say that, okay, it gives me the zoom, how far you can see. I'm pretty sure that many of you might have been asked this question by a layman looking at your big lenses, that how far this lens can see. So basically, this narrow angle of view is what is responsible for what you call the zoom. Okay. Now the shallow depth of field helps you in separating the subject from the background. Okay. And this particular super telephoto lenses, they allow you higher working distances than wide angle lenses. If you want to make a successful image with a wide angle lens, the you have to be like really close to the animal to get them appear as big as you can, make them appear with a telephoto lens. And the telephoto lens have a relatively less optical defects, and both the lenses also have their cons. Wide angle lenses are riddled with optical issues. You have chromatic aberration, you have distortion, subject separation is hard to obtain. Telephoto lenses are heavy and bulky. They need heavy support systems, and it is cumbersome to use the filters because, if you're using a polarizer or something, you need a special filter to do that, and typically filters are drop in. Now, using gear and how it differs, it impacts the look of your shot. So this is the same. This is an image. I'm going to show you 2 images back to back. So this is an image of a Pope spit viper from the Meghalaya on this branch, shot with a rectilinear wide angle 816 sigma, and this is shot with a sigma 1017 fisheye. Of course, the minimum focusing distance of the fisheye is less. The color rendition is slightly different. So you see the images look very different from each other by just changing the lenses. The focal length was almost of the ray of a similar length, but I was able to focus closer with the fisheye, and the perspective, because it is warped, the subject appears much bigger in the frame. So your gear does matter, what kind of gear you choose. So for this shot, instead of choosing a 500 mm or 600 mm or something, or like a really big telephoto lens, I chose a 7200, because 7200 still remains my favorite portrait lens. Somehow the 200 mm, that focal length, is really nicely suited when put on a full frame body. It gives you nice depth of field at 2.8, and you're able to separate the subject pretty well, and then make the shot that you want to. Okay. Now here another thing that I would like to point out is the lighting. So again, as I said, try to avoid lighting which is just flat. Okay. Try to take lighting which is backlit or side lit or something like this. This was like partially backlit kind of. It's not like strictly backlit. It's coming from a side at almost like 45 to between 45 and 60-degree angle. The light is falling onto the lionesses, and this was after a failed hunting attempt. They were, grooming each other up when we got this opportunity to make the shot. And it is one of my favorite images from Masai Mara so far. Another image which was used, which was made using a fisheye lens. A fisheye lens was used to basically make this image. Uh, Again, from the salient features that why I use the fisheye lens is because the deep depth of field and the subject, coming the deep depth of field, and plus the other thing is basically the minimum focusing. I could go like really close to the subject, and this monkey was this is a lion-tailed macaque from Valparai, and the langur, typically the macaque was very inquisitive, and he came very close to the camera, giving me this shot. Now the easiest part, execution. Execution. Having said that it is the easiest part, we will straight away break into an example where as I said, that you need a lot of presence of mind when you're executing a shot and field. First image is of a partridge that we found in Serengeti, and this guy is calling from a distance. Not a great shot, right? We have got a lot of sky. Again, the guy is calling. I know that this behavior is interesting. It's calling, but nothing interesting. Nothing interesting for me as a photographer. So I start to move the vehicle a little closer and to the side of the bird, and this is what I obtain. Okay, so I still see that, okay, I start to use the hill as the background, but there is the sky which is distracting. This dual tone is distracting me, and I need to get a nice uniform green tone in the background. So I now opt for, I just move the vehicle a little bit ahead, and this is what I get. So typically this image is slightly, retouched. The other two files that you have seen are raw files, and this is slightly retouched. This is basically the exposure is crushed a little bit. The contrast is boosted a little bit, but this is what we got from the same situation just by moving the vehicle around. So it's extremely important that, you apply your brains when you're in the field. When you shoot a subject, it's, yeah, of course, I mean, you have 10-12 frames per second, but that's not for, that's for shooting something important. It's not for the moment you you see a subject, you just, pull out your camera and start like a machine gun. No, think what you're shooting. Okay, decide on what kind of background that you want from your shot, because your background is as important as the subject itself. The next, while executing, the next tip that I can give you to make images which are out of the box is to use a flash. Now, a question of ethics comes here, that, to use a flash on an animal like that, is it ethical or something like that? But it's I would I would ask you to avoid using the flash as the main source of light, but use it as a fill flash. If you know what a fill flash means, a fill flash is basically a low powered flash which is there to just fill up the shadows a wee bit, which you can then pull up in while you're processing the image and make the image look more dramatic. So you try to use more fill flash than using the flash as your primary source of light. Primary source of light, it looks harsh. Okay, even if you diffuse it nicely, it looks good after if you have diffused it properly. But believe me, once you start to mix artificial and you start to use a fill flash, you start mixing artificial and natural lighting, it's going to be a different ballgame altogether. It enables working in difficult lighting situation. It's going to be clear from a few examples which we're going to take ahead, and freezing the subject at lower shutter speed. For this too, we're going to take the examples ahead. So now this image is of a leaping Malabar gliding frog from Amboli, and this is shot at 1/10 of a second, where I've used a front curtain flash because I was not, confident about when would I be able to, freeze it with a rear curtain like that. So front curtain flash. So you can see a small streak of movement across the frame, which is basically where the trajectory the frog followed after it was frozen by the flash. So the flash can help you freeze subjects with really low shutter speeds. But this is just a pointer. there are some things. I mean, this is a huge topic which is right now out of scope for this particular session, and we shall definitely discuss more about this when we have the opportunity. But I mean, you can, for now, you can just take a note that you can use your flashes to freeze fast moving subjects. The second image, using trying to photograph subjects in really difficult lighting situation. This was after sunset. It was almost dark. The shutter speed was 1/4 of a second, and the fill flash let me light up the snake properly. And I was able to, with the lower shutter speed, I was able to smoothen out the waterfall and get nice dramatic skies. Some dramatic backlighting here with some the dangur performing some interesting action where it is just itching the it's basically grooming the alpha male. So I waited till I had them in the perfect position where it looked symmetrical and the light was perfectly fine. Underexposed it a great deal, and then got this particular rimlet silhouette. Another thing is, you don't need to always show the face of the animal, or to evoke a feeling, or to basically inspire awe in your audiences. You can always get away by shooting the butts of some cute elephant babies. So it is more the idea. It matters more than what you're going to how the technical details, what you're trying to depict in the image. The idea is what you're trying to convey. It's not always about the technical details, or the face or the eye has to be in focus. It's nothing like that. These are just directives. There are no hard and fast rule that you have to follow. And this is the last image from the presentation. This is an image of a greater one-horned rhino that I shot in Manas National Park quite recently in the month of March. One disclaimer at this point: anybody who tries to do this and gets hurt in the process, I'm not responsible for that. Please, I request you all not to try this without proper supervision. It's quite risky to actually be in front of a rhino at these close quarters and then shoot it. Again, the technical part, the salient feature of the image is basically balancing of light, of artificial lighting, and the natural lighting which is there. So there was a very low powered flash which just filled in the shadows of the rhino, and the rhino it looked like as if. So with this, I hope that I was able to convey my thought process a little bit, across to you guys. It's quite a vast topic, and it has taken me years to actually accumulate a collection like this. So it's actually a less time frame to cover a topic this vast, but I hope I was able to do justice and convey and set you on the path where you're excited to try it out for yourself. So we will be taking the questions now. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for attending the session and being such a wonderful audience. Yeah. So we'll be taking the questions now. Okay, when was the image taken? I think when was the image taken was for the hedgehog and the Milky Way image. This was Rupal bhai, this was taken during, I think, last year summer, during the month of end of May, start of June is when it was taken. Very late in the night. Can you share the EXIF details along with the image? As Manoj, as I said, EXIF hardly matters. You can have different EXIF combinations and get the same results. It doesn't really matter after a point. Yeah. So instead of dwelling on the EXIF of an image, I would implore you to actually go ahead and experiment more with the compositions, with the angles and stuff. Thank you so much. How frequently do you go for wildlife photography? Okay, nice question, Sonika. But I would like to highlight one point over here. Wildlife photography is the only genre of photography that I follow. It is my personal belief. Wildlife photography, whatever photography genre you are trying to follow, If you want to be really good at it, stick to it. Don't hop around different genres. I'm today I'm in the city, I would shoot something else, and tomorrow when I go to a national park and I'll shoot wildlife. Believe me, your fingers forget it. Your fingers, you have a finger memory. Handling heavier lenses, and shooting the images continuously like that. If you keep shooting the same thing, so I go very very frequently. Every other day I'm in a wildlife park. What type of fill flash are you using in wildlife? Okay, what type of fill flash? Fill flash is not a different equipment or something. It is basically a normal, off camera flash that you have. Fill flash means it's a very very low power. Your images are, these flashes are really really low powered flashes, and it just fills up the shadows just a little bit. That's why it's called a fill flash. You don't use the flash as like the primary source of images. Okay. So that's basically fill flash, and there is a good chance that you're not disturbing the animal, because I flashed a rhino and it survived to tell the tale, so that means that the rhino wasn't disturbed. So your images were, I'm sharp. How can we achieve sharper images all the time? So uh, your images were sharp. How can we achieve sharper images all the time? Keep a high shutter speed, uh, and just if you're typically shooting, keep a higher shutter speed when you're keep a higher shutter speed when you're shooting with telephoto lenses. Specifically, if you're shooting on a crop body with any focal length which is more than 500 mm or 600 mm, 500 or 600 mm, keep your shutter speed at least at 1 upon 2000th of a second, and you should be able to get nice and sharp images. With the wide angle lenses, if you're shooting with low shutter speed, but it has to be enough freeze the moment of subject. So that's how you can get sharper images. You can always, if you are finding, if you find you can stop down a little bit, that improves the sharpness. It improves the depth of field a little bit of any lens. Typically the sweet spot of a lens is said to be 2 stops from the widest aperture of the lens. So you can just set your lens to that. It will give you optimal sharpness with respect to the aperture, and of course the shutter speed. For all lenses. There's no single best lens for wildlife photography. You shoot with whatever you have. A lot of people come and complain that I have an 18-50-55, and I think that it is not a suitable lens for wildlife photography. Most of the images that today I've shown you are actually shot with focal lengths which are less than 17 mm or less than 20 mm. So your 18-55 already has got that focal length, and it is absolutely a very very sharp lens. So you can use whichever lens you want to. Depends what you want to get out of your images. Thank you so much for the compliments. Beanbag tripod depends. If you are if you're inside a vehicle when you're in a safari, while you're doing a safari, you use a beanbag. Otherwise you use a tripod when you have the space to do it. Okay. You wouldn't use the flash with the super tellies, isn't it? Those are with the wide ones. No, you can use a flash with anything that you want to. Uh, good bird photographers across the world. There's some of my friends also. They use a lot of fill flash with these flash attachments, which increase the flash range. Okay, and these are basically fiberglass attachments which you put on top of a flash, and it extends the range of the flash, and you can use it with uh, uh, tele lenses that are at a longer distances. Do you use auto ISO? No, never. Nothing auto. I don't use anything auto. Everything is manual. Typically, I use a semi-auto. I won't say that I don't use anything auto, but I use the semi-auto mode all the time. I shoot in aperture priority most of the times. But when I'm shooting with flashes, I tend to shoot more in manual mode than aperture priority, because I'm able to get hold of the exposure better. If you kindly elaborate on the flamingo pic. So the flamingo pic had shade in the flamingos, on the flamingo's face and the body, and the rest of the body, and the rest of the scene was pretty brightly lit. The sun was high up in the sky. It was just past afternoon. So I overexposed by 4 stops to expose the shadows properly, get the colors in the beak and the body properly, and blow out the rest of it. on using flash, even low intensity? Is it ethical for wildlife and its cons, or animals? Your views, please. As I said, if you see any disturbance that you're causing because of the use of your flash, even if it is a fill flash, don't use it. Always be ethical. If your subject doesn't, if the subject is tolerating the flash, if the subject is allowing you to use a flash, only then use a flash. It is not strictly ethical to go and flash an animal in the face till the time the animal itself allows you. Okay. Most of the times what you can do is you can just stick around for a long enough time and just flash here and there a little bit, not directly at the animal, and just notice what kind of reaction the animal has on your flashing. If it doesn't react, or if it shows any signs of disturbance, you'll be able to make that out instantly. So whenever you see any signs of disturbance, do not use that flash. It's absolutely unethical to disturb an animal. So what you do is you just go and try and test. If you don't see any disturbances and the animal is trying to allow you, you might as well go and use it. But again, there is a catch. It's not always legal to use a flash everywhere. So you need to take care of a lot of things when you're using a flash. A flash could be a very good tool when you are, as a photographer. A flash could be a very good tool for you to add that extra drama into your image, but you need to take care of the ethics, as well as you need to see if it is legal to use a flash. How to control settings while clicking remotely, as in metering ISO settings? So there are equipments which, there are sorry, I cannot tell you a brand as of now, but you have, for example, remotely, if you want to control your cameras, the metering and ISO settings and stuff. Nowadays your camera has got these NFC functions, and Nikon, Canon, Sony, all the major brands, they have this Wi-Fi and NFC. You can connect it to your phone and you can start using it. There is dedicated gear for that, for a much longer range. What gear do you recommend for remote shooting? So to start with, you have these cheap radio remotes that you get in the market. You have Yongno, you have Digitech, you have other brands. There's so many brands, so many Chinese brands which are actually selling these remotes. This comes for 2000 for a couple of them, like that. The price is around 2.5K for a couple of them. You can just buy one off the shelf and start experimenting. I personally I have a couple of sets of Yongnos, and they have served me really well. The range is close to like 400 meters, which is enough for the kind of work that I do. Fisheye Runner photo was through handled or fixed camera setup. It was handled, but don't try that, please. Any books or photographers you follow? I follow everybody. uh, I follow everybody. Whatever I get to read about photography, I read that. I follow almost everything. How do you get subject to low shutter speed and still have focus subject? It's basically because of the depth of field, and the flash give the burst of light increases, and that's why I said that it's not really um, uh, possible to cover this up, particularly in this limited amount of time. Ethical use of flash against smaller fishes. I know there is not enough evidence that it hurts, but do you have any idea from your experience? It hurts. It hurts any species that you photograph. So a lot of time, a lot of people come to me and say that they say that you use flashes with use flash with a mammal, and but while they themselves use a lot of this with the macroscopics. So typically, if you have to be like strictly ethical, then you should completely avoid using flash. You should just work with natural light, even with macro subjects. And as you yourself said, that there's not enough evidence as of yet. So, but still, it is always good. Evidence or no evidence, it is always good to not go ahead and you know shove a light up an animal's face and beam it up with like really bright light. Also, was it frame cropped or framed this way before clicking on the flamingo pic? So it is full frame. It's not cropped. XF is basically, it is overexposed by 4-stop. It's I think f4 ISO 200. I don't remember the shutter speed. It was, I think, because of the bright light, it was probably 1/800 or something. We corporate guys get only to spend maybe 10-15 days in a year on an average. What should be planning to get some awesome shots like you? As I said, now even my shooting days are pretty less. It's not that every day I go out and shoot. Uh, Planning and research takes more time than going out and shoot. Go with people who have already, who have already covered the areas. If you want to, if you're not able to devote time in research and planning, because these are the people who have already done it. There are so many tour operators in India, and people are doing like really great work. And by going through them, you're also promoting, tourism in India, which is actually good. Uh, and just just keep an open mind and do it. How to read light in order to set correct exposure compensation? So again, a loaded question, pretty loaded question. How to read light is, uh, I'll just give you a pointer. Read about how your camera sees everything and tries to make every exposure 18% gray. Read more about it, and then you shall know. Your camera basically, when it is bright, it tries to make it dark. When it is dark, it tries to make it bright. Once you start to see like a camera, exposure compensation comes very naturally. Do you do photography for a living, or this is a hobby? I do it for a living. So what are necessary skills one should acquire to stand out of the crowd in wildlife photography? Shoot different from the rest of the crowd. That's it. That's the only skill that you need. Elephant image, where you had placed the camera in its path. Where exactly had you placed the camera? I had placed the camera on ground, on not a tripod, no nothing. It was just ground, supported, stone wedged under the lens. This is not a question, but an insight. The research before going for the trip, I think this covers around 60% of the process. Thanks for the insight. I will do this every time I go for any trip now. Okay, that's great. That's great. I was able to inspire this. Which camera plus lens did you start with? I started with, it was an old Yashica, and a Yashica Minolta, and a Nikon F2 long back with a 7210 f4 4.5 lens, and there was a 35 prime which I used. I remember. How did you get sharp images of the snake in the waterfall image with the shutter speed of? Didn't the snake move? No, the snake did not move. It was just sitting over there, trying to absorb the heat of the last heat of the day. Gear used for remote shooting. I use these cheap Yavno remotes. I mean, you can start with that, and then sky is the limit. There are more expensive equipment out there. Any books to create the vision composition in wildlife photography? So uh, uh, typically, any vision or composition, I would suggest that you watch these movies with the made by these made in the 60s and 70s by the Japanese filmmakers. One of the best to actually shape your vision, shape your sense of light. Most versatile fisheye by Canon. Sorry sir, not a Canon user. Fabulous learning and great sharing. Thanks for being so generous. Best wishes. Remote shooting. How can you focus on the subject? You got to know where your subject is going to be. You pre-focus and then you shoot. That's why it takes a lot of time. Is your flash handled, giving your independence of angle? Many of the flashes, yes. Many of the images, yes. The flash is handled actually often. Just for shooting from wide angle lens, especially composition. I know it depends on ground situation. I mean, how low can we go in a vertical on safari? The limit is basically you can't get down from the vehicle. You're not allowed to do that. So stay within inside the vehicle and get as low as possible. Remove the seat of the vehicle if possible. We do that during our trips. We in some of the trips we do remove our seats so that we can sit on the floor. Any precautions to take when we are in a safari? Yeah, be safe. Don't step out of the vehicle. Take care of yourself. Keep yourself hydrated. Every session is a learning experience. Thanks for all information you share with us. Thank you so much, ma'am. What is aperture you keep normally in aperture priority mode? I shoot wide open. Fisheye Rhino photo was through handled or fixed camera setup. It was handled. Is your focus manual to many a times? Thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining the session. It was a fantastic You were a fantastic audience. It was fantastic to actually interact with you. I hope we could have extended it further, but because this is a limited time session, I would definitely be back with more such informative sessions. And please keep an eye out for more DCP webinars. We are going to be rolling out more such episodes, more informative and offbeat episodes very soon. Thank you so much. Again, thank you very much for being such an wonderful audience. Thank you so much.